It's somewhere around 10,000 years ago, and a small band of humans is huddled together around a fire, not because they're cold, but because being alone in the dark back then was essentially a death wish. Loneliness for ancient humans wasn't an emotion, it was a predator. Dismantle the image you probably have of the lone caveman, the rugged solitary hunter, tracking prey across open plains by sheer grit and willpower, answering to no one. That image is almost perfectly backwards. And once you see what ancient social life actually looked like, the fact that loneliness feels physically wrong starts to make complete sense. Paleolithic bands averaged somewhere between 20 and 50 people, and those people were not occasionally nearby. They were constantly, inescapably present. You slept beside them, you processed food beside them. You were rarely more than a few meters from another human being for the entirety of your life. Not during work hours, not at dinner, always. The concept of personal space as a daily expectation is extraordinarily new. For most of human evolutionary history, it simply did not exist. Robin Dunbar's research on the social architecture of the human brain makes this concrete. The neocortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for complex thought, appears to be sized precisely for maintaining around 150 stable relationships, with an inner circle of about 5 people and a sympathy group of roughly 15. These aren't cultural preferences you develop over time. They are structural features of the brain itself. Your mind came preloaded with the social software, and that software was written for a group, not a solo session. But here's where it goes deeper than just safety in numbers. Ancient humans weren't only socially dependent for protection, they were physically dependent on each other in ways that started at birth. Hunter-gatherer children were carried, handled, and cared for by multiple adults every single day, not just their parents. Cooperative breeding, what researchers call alloparenting, meant that an infant's nervous system was being calibrated inside a constant wash of human contact. Oxytocin, the neurochemical most associated with bonding and trust, wasn't a special occasion release. It was background noise. It was the operating condition. Ancient humans almost certainly slept in communal piles too, which was useful because getting eaten while everyone slept was generally viewed as a negative outcome. But the side effect was that no one in our evolutionary history spent a night genuinely alone until very, very recently. The nervous system never had to learn how to handle it, which brings you to the neuroscience and to the part that should make you sit up. John Cacioppo's research on loneliness showed that social isolation triggers a measurable hypervigilance response in the brain. When you are separated from your group, cortisol rises, sleep quality degrades, and the immune system begins to underperform. The brain shifts into threat detection mode, scanning the environment for danger, reading neutral faces as hostile, interpreting ambiguous situations as threatening. This is not a metaphor for how loneliness feels. This is the measurable physiological signature your body produces when it registers social isolation. The reason that signature exists is straightforward. For 300,000 years of human history, being separated from your group wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was almost always a death sentence. Your brain learned to treat the two as equivalent. Being alone and being in danger produce the same outcome often enough that the brain stopped distinguishing between them. The alarm system was calibrated for a world where that equation was almost always correct. So the alarm makes sense. It was perfectly tuned for the Pleistocene. The problem is that the Pleistocene ended, and the alarm didn't get the update, which raises the question that drives everything forward from here. If your nervous system was built to run inside a constant hum of human proximity, and the modern world has quietly removed almost all of it, what exactly is that ancient alarm costing you every single time it fires? Your brain literally treats being alone the same way it treats being in danger, so honestly, how often does that alarm feel like it's firing for you right now? Comment your answer below, because what happens next is where this gets genuinely uncomfortable. In the United States right now, roughly 29% of all households contain exactly one person. That figure has more than doubled since 1960, when it sat at around 13%. Nearly 400 million people worldwide currently live alone, and a 2025 American Psychological Association survey found that more than half of American adults say they feel isolated, left out, or lacking companionship often or some of the time. Not occasionally. Often. This is not a blip in the data. This is the most socially isolated humans have been in the entire recorded history of the species, and your nervous system, which was built for a 20 to 50 person band sleeping in a communal pile, is running inside it right now. Naomi Eisenberger's research at UCLA demonstrated something that should genuinely stop you mid-scroll. Social pain and physical pain share overlapping neural pathways. The same brain regions that activate when you stub your toe activate when you feel rejected or excluded. This is not a metaphor your brain is using to describe an emotional state. It is the same circuitry, firing the same signal. The social attachment system, as Eisenberger's work explains it, appears to have borrowed the architecture of the physical pain system, specifically to prevent the harmful consequences of social separation. Because for 300,000 years, social separation and physical harm were functionally the same thing, which brings you to something called allostatic load, which is a clinical way of saying your body is keeping score. Every time the alarm fires and goes unanswered, it costs something. Cortisol stays elevated. Sleep architecture degrades. The immune system begins to underperform. The brain's threat detection circuitry runs hotter than it should, reading neutral faces as hostile, interpreting ambiguous messages as rejection. Your brain, which successfully navigated ice ages and megafauna and childbirth without anesthesia, is genuinely unable to distinguish between "I have been exiled from my tribe" and "I ate lunch at my desk today." It is doing its absolute best with very old software. And here's the part that most people get completely backwards. The modern tendency to treat loneliness as a personal failure, as evidence of introversion or social anxiety, or simply not trying hard enough, is biologically inverted. The alarm is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that something is wrong with the match between your ancient hardware and your current environment. Ancient humans never got lonely, not because they were more emotionally resilient or socially skilled, but because the conditions that trigger the alarm simply never existed for them. The alarm had no reason to fire. It was like a smoke detector in a world with no fire. Because this is where it gets more achievable than most people expect. The biology is actually asking for something very specific. Research suggests the nervous system responds not to the quantity of social contact, but to its physical reality. Eye contact, proximity, shared activity, the low-level background hum of other humans nearby. This is why sitting in a coffee shop and speaking to no one still feels different from sitting alone in an empty apartment. It is why a single genuine conversation, even a brief one, measurably reduces the threat response signature more than hours of passive scrolling through other people's lives. The ancient social environment was not primarily about deep emotional intimacy. It was about constant low-stakes physical co-presence. Other bodies in the room. Other voices at a reasonable distance. The background noise of a group going about its business. That is a much more achievable target than most people realize. And it is a very different target than the one modern culture tends to sell you. So the next time the alarm fires, that specific, slightly physical ache of an empty evening that you have probably been calling by other names, you are not experiencing a modern psychological weakness. You are experiencing a 300,000-year-old biological signal that was right about everything it was designed for. Understanding that does not make the feeling disappear, but it does mean you can stop arguing with it, stop pathologizing it, and start giving your nervous system the one thing it was actually built to receive: other humans nearby, doing ordinary things together. Subscribe for more and watch the next one. It goes even deeper into why your ancient wiring still runs everything.